Pastor Sneed, once again, how are you today?
I'm doing well.
That's good. It's good to see you again. You know, I enjoy sitting here talking with you the times we get a chance to. I think people have sort of adopted the Pastor's Corner name that I sort of mentioned before. So let's make it official now. This is the Pastor's Corner here at Ben Washington Baptist Church, where we get the opportunity to talk to the pastor and just casual conversation, ask questions about what's going on. Since we're now a couple of months into this coronavirus thing, of course things have changed, no fault of ours, but we have to deal with the changes in the best way that we can. And so I know that you're excited. I heard you preach a message recently, and you talked about the God that America has forgotten. And I think that was a very pertinent sermon that is very well the way we could see things. But even with that being said, how are you feeling today and what's going on? I know you got some things you want to talk about. Why don't I just give you an open floor,
mic?
open
mic.
All right,
well, I am excited to be here, and I do like the casual conversations. And you do a great job of asking questions. But I think some people are wanting to know when we're going to come back together as a church, and that's $1 million question.
It is.
So what I've done, or I try to do, is stay alert to what's currently going on. And so just recently, Governor Abbott lifted the state restrictions. And so he has developed a plan for businesses to ramp back up. He didn't say anything about churches, so you're starting to see more traffic on the streets. You're starting to see some businesses open. You're still seeing curbside businesses at restaurants, and churches have still been in the lockdown mode. So on May 15th, which may be before this is seen or maybe after, but on May 15th.
It'll probably be after.
Okay. Well, on May 15th,
maybe.
Dallas County commissioners who first put some restrictions on large gatherings, they're going to make a decision to either end or to modify large gatherings. Even though the church may not have to comply with the order, I think it does make good sense for me as pastor, who has concern for all members, to not be premature and to assume that with all the restrictions lifted that we can come back and just take up where we left. So as pastor, I have to make sure that when we do regather, every member is going to feel comfortable, every member is going to feel safe, that we're going to have some things in place so that we're erring on the side of caution. And so that's what I've been doing. I've been looking at some options, what other churches are considering. I've been emailing the board or conferencing with them through Zoom. I plan to have a meeting with the deacons, and so those major decisions that have to be made, I expect them to roll out shortly.
You know, I think you pretty much answered the question I started to have. What if you have some members, and not just the congregational members, but people that hold offices, if you will? What if they're not comfortable with coming back? You know, someone who is the youth minister, if you will, or the choir director, you know, because everybody has their own fears or concerns. But I think you pretty much answered that question, that, you know, hopefully it'll be a time when everybody is concerned and comfortable. I think that you pretty much answered the question already. What do you think about, you know, a lot of people I'm hearing saying, even though they are lifting the restrictions now, that it's still too soon. And how much of the lifting of the restrictions do you think that the government or people in office who has the authority to do so are bowing under the pressure of the public? You know, we saw some demonstrations, I don't know where it was, in Missouri, Detroit, somewhere it was, where people were downtown protesting, you know. And so I think about, you know, Pontius Pilate, and I think about when Jesus was on trial and he bent more towards the people were, you know, release Barabbas instead of Jesus. You know, sometimes the people get in an uproar and you have the authorities start to bow down or sort of leave what may be right and go with what the people are saying? What do you think about that? Am I being totally off base with that?
Well, the protest that you mentioned took place in several states. One of the first states was the state of Michigan. The concern that I have is that just because the restrictions are lifted, it may not be prudent or wise to just go back right away.
Right.
You have to consider the fact that, number one, ample testing is not readily available for everyone who wants testing, and so you need to consider that. The other thing you have to consider is the fact that you may have a large part of your congregation that meets that the most vulnerable. And the third thing is you have to make sure that people shouldn't be concerned that if they don't come back right away, even though the church has regathered, that they're showing a lack of faith. Right? We want people to come back when they are comfortable.
Right.
But so here's what members need to know. We have plans to continue videotaping our messages whether they come back or not. And the reason why we have a desire to do that is because it's a way of getting the gospel message out. There may be people who may be channel surfing one Sunday. They're not a Christian, or perhaps they backslid, and they may hear the message of hope and
Very
deliverance.
possible. Yeah.
And so we want to continue to provide those services. And the other thing is, we have a way now to be able to provide services to members who may be temporarily sick or out of town, and so they can still tune in to what's going on at Ben Washington. So we want to continue to provide the online services. When members feel safe, or when they feel like it's relatively safe, we want them to be able to come back, but we want to assure them that when they come back, that there are safety precautions in place. So right now we're planning on purchasing thermostats or thermometers that can scan you to see if you have a fever. If you have a fever, we don't want you to come when you're sick. So we have that in place. We also want to make sure that between services, we're wiping down the seats where people are sitting, or books that they may have grabbed. So we want to do all those things. We'll make sure that disinfectants and hand sanitizers are readily available, both in the sanctuary, in the fellowship hall, and the educational building. And so just kind of give you and those who may be listening, one of the things that we may have to consider is modifying our services. So our service times may shorten to allow fewer people to come in a worship service, but to still get the main ingredients of a worship service. So we may have a self-imposed restriction on the number of people who may come to a worship service. But again, we do want to practice social distancing. We do want to practice safe hygiene. We do want to practice faith, but we also want to operate without fear. And so for those members who might feel this, if the church is open and they're fearful and they don't come back, we're not going to ridicule them. We're not going to ask the question, where is your faith? We want them to feel comfortable. And when that comes about, who knows? But no one should be under any pressure to come back when they're not comfortable or when they're not ready. And as a church, we're going to continue to try to provide ways in which we can preach the gospel, we can teach the gospel, we can continue to serve, we can continue to give, and we can proclaim the name of Jesus. So it's going to look different. I'll just give you an example. How we do the Lord's Supper is going to have to change. So when you take the Lord's Supper and you pull out your bread and your wine and you pass it to the next person, that's going to have to change. the fellowship period that I have come to love and enjoy, and meet members from way in the back, and working my way up front and hugging and shaking hands, that's probably going to have to change as well for a time period until we're safe. As right now, there is no vaccine. Right now, they're still testing certain things. I listen to our leaders in the science field. I listen to our leaders in different arenas, and I also try to listen to what the Word of God says. And so I want to make sure that even in a self-imposed quarantine, or even when the restrictions are lifted, we are not rushing to judgment, and we're not being presumptuous, and we're not putting anyone at harm's way. And so when we do come back, there's a lot of questions to answer. I've actually emailed those questions to our board and to our deacons to give them time to formulate their thoughts. But this is the middle of May, and hopefully before the end of May, we will have made some decisions about large group gatherings. I've had people ask questions if we're going to have Vacation Bible School. We've already had to cancel the Senior Saints trip to Oklahoma City.
Oh, man.
Yeah, we had to cancel that. And so we want to make sure that 2020 is, we're going to get through it. And we are going to get through it. But we want to make sure that when we do come back together, things will be healthy, but things will also be safe for even our most vulnerable person. As pastor, I try to make sure that I'm thinking about the least among us, and certainly those who are vulnerable, who may have pre-existing conditions. I would rather err on the side of caution than to just jump the gun and have them come back and make the wrong decision.
You know, the term new normal, I'm thinking that's pretty much a temporary term, meaning because when it's safe to come back, does that mean coronavirus has been cured? It's been brought under control? Because the things that we're doing as far as hygiene goes, to me, should have been in place all along anyway, every day, all the time. And you hear some people say, well, I practice washing my hands all the time. I'm one of those persons that I wash my hands. I don't, you know, it's just what I do. My mother once told me, I asked her once that she knew what I would be doing for a living. And she said, she thought for a minute, and it was on a Mother's Day actually, and we were sitting having lunch. And she says, I don't know what I think you would have been doing, but I know one thing. And I said, what is that? She said, I know whatever you did, you weren't going to be getting your hands dirty. So she knew I didn't like cutting lawns, painting houses, you know. And I got into the radio business, so I'm pushing buttons. But so the new normal, you know, we're cleaning and wiping down things. So when it becomes a time when people are comfortable, because most people fall back into a habit. So if we're not in the habit of cleaning and you know, hygiene, then it might be a possibility that we will go back to the way we were before, but just not have the worries that we have now with the coronavirus. Do you see something like that possibly happening, where we will get back to hugging people, shaking hands, but it not seem unnatural or not normal? Because right now, the new normal is doing all this stuff that we're doing now and trying to stay safe. That's what I think the new normal is now, but we might get back to the old normal, except you're washing your hands more. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I certainly do hope that the part of the fellowship that I've enjoyed the most, shaking hands or hugging, that at some point we can do that when it's safe.
Yeah, that's the hope.
And so I'm hoping that we can resume some of our practices. But as you said, it's always been a good thing to wash your hands and to try to have proper hygiene. So I think the new normal is going to eventually go back to
the old
what
normal
we've done in the past.
With some modifications.
With some modifications, but it's always good to be reminded that the things that are not seen can actually do as much harm as the things you see.
Yeah.
So a virus is one of those things.
There are some things that have changed in our society, and we think as a church that we will help to make people better. Not just feel better, but to be better with our practices and our worship of the Lord and things like that. But I was reading a list of some of the things that are going to change that people have really bought into. One is working from home, telecommuting. That has risen so high that people are liking it, not having to go in and wear your suits and certain clothes. You can be at home in your pajamas and do your work. That seems to have been on the uprise, and people are saying that might stay, that might remain. The ordering of food. Having food delivery has went up, and people seem to be enjoying that. I remember when I was growing up as a kid, we used to order Chinese food. I was 10, 12 years old. That food delivery is not new, but with the Uber Eats and different things like that, people think it's new. But when we were little, they had that, the milkman would come and bring you milk to your house,
I remember that.
You remember that? Yeah,
I do.
That's been changed. So there are some things that have changed with the coronavirus that people are looking at as this is a good thing now. So I'm wondering, as a church, it's always we sometimes try to get people to participate in church events and activities now, before coronavirus. And you have a certain percentage of people that will participate and some won't. We have a unique situation here because we have people that live, not always so close, but we're sort of like a satellite church where people come from a different, we're kind of out of the way. And so we have to still promote for people to come to church and offer programs. Or do you see any new programs or ministries that the church is wanting to offer to draw people in, to make it more interesting,
Well, I do know from speaking with a number of pastors that more people are tuning in to their virtual worship services than what they were having prior to. So that's a good thing. I also know that because of the situation, more churches are entering into the 21st century in terms of technology. And I also know that even as you mentioned, in the business section, different ways of meeting the needs of people are occurring, and whether it be through food delivery, whether it be through some other means. So that's all been a positive, and so I'm excited about the fact that the churches are going to adapt as well. So we're doing some good things right now, and I do believe that as a church, we're going to continue to share the good news of Jesus Christ with people that are not members. And some of those people who may be actually listening to it online may end up actually coming to our church as well. And one of the things I hope to do is continue to have meaningful Bible study online. I like the idea that people can engage in a Bible study when it's most opportune for them. I also like the fact that people can participate in a worship service at an hour that's convenient with them. And then you also have people who are listening to the services at home who may have relatives who are not members of the church, but because they're in close proximity, those people are hearing the word. So I'm excited about the fact that the word is being proclaimed. So even though I don't like the fact that we're not gathered together, I've seen some creative ideas. I love what the IT team is doing. I love what some ideas as far as the Zoom meetings. I like the fact that I can see everybody on a computer screen, and in Sunday school you have people asking questions, and you see people's faces. So all that is pretty good.
Okay, well, it is some exciting times we're living in, and the adjustments seem to be something we've been able to go with the flow, and I really like that. I think our website has increased, the traffic flow has increased of people still having a hunger for Christ, still having a hunger for the Word, and it's our job to continue to dispense of His Word. And I think that He's given us the opportunity to be viable still and to make the moves and the changes that our society, that the situation is requiring us to do right now. I've been able to really shed some light on our website with some of my friends and sending out text messages, and even the sermons that we have, there are links, and I can send those to links to my friends, where before we couldn't do that. And so I think we have an increased number of viewership because I'm excited about it. I'm really excited about what we're doing and the things that we're doing here in place in the building as far as when we get ready to gather again. So it's a pretty exciting time.
You know what Jesus said?
I know some of the things He said. What do you tell? What did He say?
One of the things that Jesus said, He said, the gospel is going to be preached in all the ends of the world, and then the end will come. And so the good news is, can you imagine a person who's overseas, who doesn't come to America, and yet they can go online and can type in BWBC or can type in Ben Washington Baptist Church, and they can hear the gospel? Can you imagine people who are having to stay at home because of the coronavirus, calling their friends or emailing their friends, say, hey, why don't you come to church with me? What do you mean, come to church with you? We're in 2 different cities. But no, come watch church with me by going online. Can you imagine that experience? And so the good news is that even though we're not physically gathered together, more people are hearing the good news about Jesus saves, and I hope that will continue.
Yeah, I've heard people say, well, I don't have anything to wear to church. Boom. You don't have that excuse anymore, And most people have a cell phone or iPad or the social media apps on their phone, and so there are some good things that can come out of this.
Watching church in your pajamas.
Yeah,
that's cool.
That's good. We make that do that on one of the TikToks or something.
Now, when they come back, don't wear pajamas, but still come back. Okay.
Come as you are.
Well,
no.
Come.
Yeah.
Come.
Yeah. Well, so that's good. I'm glad we were able to take this time out to just chat it up a little bit more, and I'm sure this won't be the last time. Unless there's something else you'd have to say, we'll say.
Well, one of the things I do want to say is that we hope to be able to do a large outreach with our community here in the Bad Creek area. I'm hoping that we can get volunteers together to provide needed services to members and non-members. So if you're a member of Ben Washington and you want to assist us in a couple of projects that we have, which require you to come out and be prepared to give of your time, but also give to the Back Creek community, if you would call the church or email Sister Dining so that we can get the volunteers. We need to do something for our community prior to us coming back, or even after we get back, because Jesus said, by this shall all men know that you are my disciples, by the love that you have one for another. So we want to do something to demonstrate the love of Christ in a real and practical way. And so if you want to volunteer, please call the church. And also, if you have questions about what's going on at Ben Washington, my personal cell phone number, 817-247-5078. So with that said, Brother White, thank you for allowing us to have another Pastor's Corners chat, and you do a great job.
Hey, thank you. So, and we'll do it again. So thank you very much for being a participant, and God bless you, man.
Thank you.
Fist bump.